I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee on Tuesday, March 27th at 5:19 p.m. And I will take the roll. Trustee Denton.
Present.
Trustee Muhammad here. Trustee House.
Present.
Thank you. And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance and then prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Stubbs, could you do the prayer and come to the podium so we can all hear you, please?
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody bow their heads? Heavenly Father, I come to you in the name of Jesus just to thank you for another day. Father in heaven, I ask that you forgive all of us for the sins that we have done. Guide us in the direction that you want us to go. Soften our hearts. Let us love one another like you love us, Father. I thank you for waking each and every one of us up. I ask that you come into this building. I ask that you put your loving arms around all of us and protect us, Father, as we go on our day-by-day journey along with our families. I ask that you disperse your angels upon us in this room. I ask that you bring harmony into this community, Father. Father in heaven, I come to you in the name of Jesus just to praise your name another day. I ask that you control our finances. I ask that we do what you want us to do and not what we want us to do. In Jesus' name, I thank you, I adore you, and let everybody have a safe trip home and bless their families and pour us out enough blessings that we can all have room enough to receive. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Trustee Stubbs. Just to give everybody an overview of this meeting, it'll be a very informal meeting. I'll give you an overview of our budget for upcoming 2018-19. On the negative side, we have a $2 million deficit facing us. So what we've asked, if you notice, you have department heads from the fire department, public works, and police department, and what we've asked them to do is to help us in coming up with some revenue enhancers that we can help in offsetting this $2 million budget deficit in our budget. And the other challenge we have, and it will become public very soon, is our arrearages on the water bill to Chicago, the city of Chicago. Right now, the number is between $7 to $8 million. How did that happen? We discovered as trustees, and trustees can correct me if I'm wrong in the timing of this. We got this information, I believe, in July, upon the leaving of our former village administrator, that the payments were not being made. We fell into arrearages, and I believe the penalty to Chicago, and you can correct me, Ms. Redmond, is approximately $100,000 per month every time it's late.
It actually varies. It's 1.25% of the current balance.
And that's usually, our bill runs about $140,000, $150,000 a month just for water.
Per account for one.
Yes.
So our bills are like anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 a month.
Which includes the arrearages that we pay. Well, that's just the water. And that's why we have Ms. Redmond here to get the numbers. That's what we were talking about yesterday, so we can have the real numbers. The bottom line is that we owe them about $7 to $8 million. Is that correct, Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
And we have to come up with a payment plan, and that's part of our challenge, which we won't deal with at this meeting, but we will go into the next. Primarily, this meeting is to bring some chances to bring revenue into our village, and I'd like to start with the fire department. They had 4 great ideas that we can actually initiate that would not cost us any money. One of the ideas that they had was to secure a couple of ambulances so that we can have an ambulance service. That would, of course, take the procurement of 2 vehicles and plus to be equipped. But right now, if you could, Chief Dyer or Scott, whichever one you want to go first, so we can talk about, I think, can we do the daycare first? Because I was moved by Scott's impassioned plea. And Scott, if you would take the mic, and we're going to go over the daycare center of what the fire department is proposing in regulating our daycare centers at the same time. And I know the fire and police would say number one, and I agree that the first duty is public safety. It's definitely about public safety, but at the same time, the reality is we're a business, we're a corporate business, and we have to generate revenue. So Scott, if you could, let's start out with what you were telling me earlier today concerning what you have been trying to do since 2013.
The reason, as trustees stated, I'm here is back in June 3rd of 2013, I responded to a med run of a unresponsive 1-year-old child. It turned out when we got there it was a home daycare. One of the caretakers was on the front lawn crying, and the other one was in the house crying next to the child who was not moving. I immediately checked his airway and then started CPR on him. His name was Aiden Carter, and he was 1.5 years old. Unfortunately, he passed away. Now, neither one of those caretakers knew CPR, and that's a state law. As you walk into any daycare, you'll see a placard on the wall that states the occupancy that they're allowed to have for children. Theirs had 6, and it was crossed out and handwritten 9. 2 simple violations that cost this child his life. And since that point, I've made it a personal goal of mine to get this ordinance passed. The unfortunate thing is DCFS is so overwhelmed that after your initial inspection, they don't have an opportunity to come back out. They just can't. We have currently, at this time, we had 100 home daycares and we had 10 storefront style daycares. We have every right to inspect the storefront daycares because that has a business license and we have the authority having jurisdiction to allow us to inspect those. The home daycares are unregulated, and they remain unregulated to this day. DCFS, as I said, to claim that they are overwhelmed is an understatement. They come for the initial inspection. They say they'll do an annual inspection, but they usually show up maybe once every 3-4 years, if that. The premise of this is pure and simple for me. It's safety for our community. It's safety for the children in this community, and I don't know what's more important, in my opinion. It's simple things as having plastic covers on the outlets, or if they choose to use the basement as part of their daycare, they need to have special style stairs and a window installed in order for those children to be able to get out of it. There needs to be 2 means of egress in every home. Now, to add on to this, one of the things I think is important for us as first responders and as firefighters, if we pull up to a house, I need to know that this is a home daycare. I need to know that there potentially could be anywhere from 2 to 10 children in this house. And we don't have any way of knowing that. And unfortunately, I believe a year ago, and Chief Collins can elaborate if he needs to, I believe they responded to, state police or somebody responded to a home, and it turns out that there was a felon at the home and there was also a gun located, and it was a daycare, along with some other, I believe, illegal drugs. So this ordinance is going to allow us to have some oversight. It's going to allow us to protect the children of this village, and it's going to allow us to have some consistent oversight twice a year inspecting these homes that people are choosing to use as a business, and I think it's great. It helps with the economy, it helps with our village, but in my opinion, there needs to be some oversight. We need to have some regulation involved, and most important, we need to have some sort of enforcement mechanism to allow us to inspect these, and to, if we need to, whatever penalty is chosen, if there is a penalty, we need to have that in the ordinance. So that's what this is about. I have, it's been 5 years I've been working on this. I have a list of suggestions on things we can do to update the ordinance when it was written back in 2014. And I'd like to at least have it entertained, and maybe the trustees can look at it and see where we can go with it.
Scott, give me an example, an inspector from the fire department going into one of these homes. Tell me exactly what are you looking for and what would I need to comply with as a business owner with a home daycare center?
The first thing I'm looking for is your license, and make sure it's not altered in any way. Anything from your sidewalk not being cracked, stairs being intact, handrails going upstairs, up the stairs to the front of the unit. Make sure the doors are securely locked. Make sure you have a locking tumbler on the inside. Sometimes you'll see people use their key on the inside to lock the door. Well, not everybody has keys. That door gets stuck, you can't open that door. I'd be looking for general housekeeping, clutter, make sure the outlets are covered, checking their last inspection from DCFS. If they choose to use the basement, check for those stairs that need to be there, 2 means of egress. And I actually have a list of things from DCFS's website and from the people at DCFS that I would go on.
I want you to go over what we talked about earlier. Why isn't DCFS sufficient enough to do what you're talking about now? Why can't they just do what you're talking about?
Well, as an example, at this point we have 75 home daycares in town, and I believe 7 or 8 storefront daycares. That's in our community alone. I imagine Chicago has something in the range of 5,000, maybe more. Take Riverdale, they probably have 50 or 60, and we can say that around all the communities around us. They're overwhelmed, they're understaffed. They don't have the time it's just that simple. They just don't have the time. And if we're going to take a position of public safety in our community, then we should do what we can to make these kids safe.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And what we'll do, and this will be for our committee of the whole meeting next month, we're going to go into more detail on this, and by that time we'll have the numbers, and we'll be able to get some projections on the revenue that this would add to our budget. And thank you, Scott.
And I want to add, one of the reasons that I became so passionate about this is because at the time that Aiden passed away, at 1.5, my son was 2. So it was very, very close to home.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Chief Dyer.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to present to you a couple of recovery projects that we've been working on. The first one is the Village of Dalton Fire Department is seeking to collect a revenue service for rendering to recoup costs for emergency response within the Village of Dalton. We did a forecast with a company called Fire Recovery USA a couple of years ago. And in that forecast, based on the initial forecast of the Fire Department of the Village of Dalton, we would have come up with approximately a net income of $144,521. What we based that on was motor vehicle accidents, vehicle fires, false alarms, air ambulance, meaning helicopter landings, fires, hazardous conditions, and special rescue. For motor vehicle accidents, we had about 128, which would have recouped 63,000. Motor vehicle accidents with no fluid on the ground, 128, another 21,000. Vehicle fires, 31, $3,751. False alarms, 238 for the year. Recouped $4,760. No ambulance, no Airbus, no helicopters that year. Fires, 128, recouped $38,400. Hazardous conditions, 115, led to $48,300. And special rescue, we had 4, which led to $960 that could have been recouped for a total of $144,521. Any questions on that?
No. Hopefully the residents are taking notes on it because we can answer any questions at the end of this during the citizens' address. But that was the first proposal, correct?
That was the first one of 3 I have.
Yes, sir. Okay, you can go to the next one.
So the next one, the Village of Dalton Fire Department is seeking to amend and add items to Ordinance 15-048 Fire Prevention Code for a fiscal impact residential rental inspection update. So what we want to do is go into the residential rental properties and do fire inspections. So we're looking for fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, CO detectors, means of egress. So, and people ask, well, don't we do that when they first rent the property? Yeah, but if I buy or if I rent the property today, I might live there for 5 more years, and no one else goes into that building for another 5 years. And we really preach smoke detector awareness. So smoke detectors save lives. You know, early alert of the smoke detector will save lives. So it's really important to us with the smoke detectors. The next one would be the fire alarm nuisance fee. Now we don't have any numbers to to come up with the nuisance fee, but what we do have is our false alarms. For the year of 2017, we had a number of 279 false alarms. So you might ask, what's a nuisance fee? A nuisance fee is any alarm that comes in more than 3 times a week. We go to Our Saviors a lot, and from October to December, Unit 101 had been called for 16 times. A guy was just setting off the alarm because he didn't care or whatever. He was just messing with his alarm. So we were there 16 times between October and December. Other things would be false alarms, mechanical failure, improper installation, lack of proper maintenance, and any undetermined cause. People sometimes pull the alarms just for whatever reason. If we go out to Menards more than 3 times a week because their alarm system's messed up, what they need to do is, if you're going to have a test in your system, you need to call us first, call Buzz first, and tell them to shut your system down, and we're going to be on 911. If they do a test and it causes the fire department to come out and render services, a false alarm, then we're going to charge them for that. And those numbers, be it the inspection fees or the nuisance alarm, false alarms, would be up to the board to figure out how much that fine would be. But when you take away the fire department on a nuisance alarm, you're taking them away from someone else's safety for a nuisance alarm. So we want to cut that down, and that will also make the people who own these buildings, you know, make sure they're safe and make sure that the alarms aren't being pulled unjust.
Okay, that covered fire recovery, and you covered fire prevention code 15-048,
and the nuisance alarm was
nuisance alarm
ordinance 13-005. No, that was a recovery 13-005, and the other one's 15-48.
Okay.
Fire prevention code.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Good.
And we may have questions at the end.
Okay.
Just hang around. Okay, if I can get Chief Collins from the Dalton Police Department, some things we talked about, myself and Trustee Pearson. They're all aware of our budget shortfall, and they've all come up with some type of remedies for us. Chief.
Good evening, everyone. Some of the things that we talked about, one of them is not per se aggressively pursuing people just to be ticketed in them. But what we do have on the books are past violators who have not paid their violations. So we will be aggressively going after those past violators. And one of the programs that we instituted was the boot list. So on the boot list, believe it or not, there are hundreds of cars on there. And these violators go back several years. So we had been aggressively attacking these vehicles that are on the boot list so that people would be encouraged to come in and pay their fines. That enforcement effort will increase, and it has increased, but it will increase because of the way the list is structured. Now it's a live list, and the officers have access to it every day. So they can look at this list and start pulling vehicles off of it every day. So the methods that we use here at the Dalton Police Department, the car can either be booted, and the ordinance calls for the car can just be towed, and the person can deal directly with the collection agency. One of the other things that we have is of lack of participation for people buying their village stickers. We write hundreds and hundreds of citations for failure to display village sticker. And one of the methods that, I mean, I'm sure everyone in here has purchased their village sticker. If you've purchased yours, every other resident should have to purchase theirs if they own a car here. It's only fair. If you're paying the money, then they should pay also. So we will be gathering a list from the Secretary of State of all vehicles that are registered to the Village of Dalton, and if they have not paid their ticket, they will be, a couple ways we'll do it. There might be an initial court date that advises them, you haven't paid, you haven't bought a village sticker in several years, you must appear at a hearing on such and such date. Or the other method is, if it's known that they haven't purchased a sticker in whatever length of time, they'll be issued a citation and then have to appear and explain. The burden will be on them of whether they still live here or if their car is still registered here. So that's one of the methods we're going to try to get people to encourage them to buy their village stickers. I believe last count there might have been 26,000 cars on the
It was, according to the state of Illinois, I think it was 16,000 registered, and we get about half of that.
Right.
Pay for their.
Exactly. So our goal will be to get as much of that as we can. The other thing that we were talking about was overweight truck enforcement. So we had been doing overweight truck enforcement, but one of the challenges that we run into is when we write these tickets. They're called state tickets, and these tickets are adjudicated in Markham. And when state tickets are adjudicated in Markham, the revenue from it is split three ways. The county gets a cut, the state of Illinois gets a cut, and whatever's left over goes to the municipality. So one of the things we want to do is take a look at tweaking some of our ordinances or even developing some ordinances that will take these overweight truck violators and send them to our local court so that the fines can be paid directly to the Village of Dalton and there's no cut that has to be given to the county or to the state. And one of the other challenges of having to send these tickets to the state, to Markham, is that an initial fine might be written of, let's say, $5,000 for the overweight. When it gets to court, obviously, judges don't want these cases on their docket for too long. So they tell the attorneys, make sure you strike a deal. They wheel and deal, and they'll say, I'm guilty if I can pay a lower fine. So just because a citation is written for $5,000, $10,000, or whatever, that doesn't mean that that's what they're going to pay. It may end up being a couple thousand, it may end up being a few $100s. So there's no way to tell. Another thing we talked about is with our code enforcement officers, doing some kind of conversion into community service officers. And what that would allow them to do, instead of just enforcing code violations, they can also write vehicle violations out there or any ordinance tickets, such as improper parking, failure to display village sticker, expired registration, etc. We'll have more personnel out there taking care of these violations. Currently, the police officers write the citations, parking citations, and we have 2 crossing guards that are cross-trained as parking enforcement officers, and they go out there. They have been writing a lot of violations also, but if we have more boots on the ground, we can start getting more violators. And this isn't to say that we just want to continue to pursue our residents, but residents that don't violate are the ones that end up having to pay the price by the people that do violate and are not paying their fines. And thus you end up in a situation where you have to raise prices on other things, like passing on the costs to the other customers, so to speak. Another thing that will be coming pretty soon is ETSB funds. Now we have a joint EST board with Linwood and also Burnham. So the 911 capture fund, so when someone calls 911 from a cell phone, a certain percentage of that money goes to the municipality that the 911 call came from. So we'll be able to capture those 911 funds soon. And what that money can go for is purchase of new equipment, radio equipment, anything along that lines, such as dispatch or radios in the cars, things like that. So that particular money won't have to come out of general fund. And those are some of the things that we've come up with. Is there any questions I can answer for you?
One of the things, if you can talk about it, because it's kind of confidential, just talk about it in a general sense of how we're trying to attack that overtime issue without going into the particular department, but what
Sure.
is used to reduce it.
Okay. I talk about several areas. The unavoidable overtime. Officers are required to appear in court, and court appearances sometimes are on their off days. There's no way around it. If they're out there writing tickets or making arrests, they are required to appear in court. When they appear in court on their off days or vacation or whatever the case may be, they are entitled to overtime. So that's one of the unavoidable overtime areas that we can't do anything about. The other area is when major incidents happen. Yeah, major crimes, shootings, or whatever the case may be. Detectives are called in. Officers might be required to stay over their shift to cover the needs of the investigation, such as perimeter security or guarding prisoners or transporting prisoners to and from the hospital or whatever it is. Those are the areas that overtime is also uncontrollable. So one of the areas that we do control, and we have already started doing this, is before any, especially in the investigative division, before any overtime is worked, it has to be cleared through the deputy chief or myself. So a detective can't just, for the sake of just doing an investigation, come in on their own on their day off, or start before their shift, or start or remain after their shift. It has to be for a legitimate law enforcement purpose that we will approve this overtime. So that has been working, and I foresee that being even more under control in the future. So that's one way of controlling the overtime. But from time to time, the lack of personnel will be a catalyst for overtime. So if you're already short on personnel, obviously people are entitled to take their vacations, use their personal time, use their comp time, and those positions have to be filled because of minimum staffing requirements. So if there's a gap, it has to be filled, and by law it cannot be filled with a part-time officer. It has to be filled with a union person. But the methods of trying to control those overtime, we've already begun.
All right, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Anybody on the board have any questions for either chief?
One question with the overweight, and you mentioned that they're going to Markham right now for the fines. What would it take to make that all Dalton?
What would, I'm sorry, so repeat
The court, instead of sending the overweight offender to Markham Courthouse, what would we need to do to make
to have it come to the local court?
Yes, sir.
We'll have to take a serious look at the ordinance and see if we are able to actually create basically laws about the overweights. Now, some of the truck routes are controlled by the state of Illinois. If they say this is a designated truck route, you can only do so much on that truck route because they say commerce has a right to come through this particular road or pass along this particular road, and we may not be able to control something like that. But our smaller streets, the streets that we actually have control over, we may be able to impose an overweight restriction. One of the larger areas that we do the enforcement is over the bridge between Chicago Road and Indiana. The bridge has a certain weight restriction, and truckers come from the rail yard, either going into or coming from there. Sometimes they're overweight. A lot of times they're overweight, and that's one of the biggest areas that we attack right there. But that, unfortunately, is a state ticket, and it goes to Markham. So we'd have to take a serious look at the ordinance to be able to see what we can do for ourselves.
Kind of go over the part, because I know some residents may have this in their mind now, because they're saying, why can't we have officers that it's hidden like at some of these stop signs and places that they're speeding down residential areas?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have a concentrated presence at some of those places where you got stop signs violated, residential streets where they're doing over 35, 40 miles an hour?
That is a very good question. The answer is that we have been doing that. The downside to that is the officers that do those details are on overtime. So in order to control this overtime, we have to reduce these details. So if the shift has 5 officers, they need those 5 officers to handle the call load. And a lot of times they even get busy, so call load backs up. So you can't really take an officer from the shift and put them on a traffic detail. So but we have done traffic details, stop sign details, speeding details, and there's been a lot of citations written. It doesn't stop the behavior, but what it does is just targets those violators. So when we leave an area, the same type of activity continues. And I can say that probably every stop sign in town is run every day at different times of day. Their speed is out there. They're a dime a dozen. If you put a detail out there, you're going to get a bunch of violators. That's just the way it is.
Now, how effective is I'll tell you a couple of spots, and I live like on the border between Dalton and South Holland, like 155th near King and in that area. South Holland will have a police vehicle there, unmanned. Right. You go down Michigan City, when you get to State Line Road to make that right to get my cigarettes, or my gas. There's a Hammond police vehicle there, unmanned. Mm-hmm. Does that change behavior? What's the purpose of that, and how effective is that? Can we do that?
Well, we can, and we've done it a couple times. But it's a very, very, very short-term Band-Aid. And what happens is when people come along the same route every day, going home or going to work, they realize that the car is unmanned, and it becomes invisible. So if they know that there's no officer in it, I mean, it's just like when the state police put that vehicle on the I-294, and then once people started realizing it was empty, they put a dummy in. I don't know if you remember that. I remember. And then all of a sudden, when people realize that the trooper in there is not moving, must be a dummy, they continue to speed. So it works for a very short time. I don't recommend it. I mean, it's more of a visibility issue, but it doesn't work that well.
Okay. I always wondered about it. Any more questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Chief.
Yes, sir.
And now I'll read off a couple of recommendations. And again, these are simply recommendations, meaning they're not written in stone, but we'll go into detail on these in our next month's COW meeting. And this is to raise approximately $100,000 additional by increasing some village stickers, motorcycle stickers, B truck stickers, and over B truck stickers. And also, I just want to read off two things concerning water, where the village of Dalton loses, by the way. I think our minimum is $56.10. And one of the proposals is to bring that up to a healthy level. I think the average bill, and we have persons from the water department, let me say this out loud and you can correct me. Would you say an average water bill in the village of Dalton is about $135 to $160 a month, Barbara? Is that about? So that means if I get an estimated bill, it would be better for me to have an estimated bill of about $135, $160, so that when they get an actual reading, my next bill would be close to what it would have been as opposed to $56.10. Does that sound right? Okay. I practiced that. I wanted to make sure it was right. Now, this last thing I want the residents to hear, where we're losing money, but we cannot continue to lose money, and I'm going to give you the scenario, and we have Public Works, and they can verify if this is correct. We're talking about increasing the after-hours turn-off and on fees, because we currently charge $75. Those jobs require a 2-man crew with a 2-hour minimum pay at time and a half per the union contract. It currently costs us, the Village of Dalton, $93.44 for each laborer to go out after hours for this type of job. That figure includes, of course, overtime and its associated fringes. At the current rate that we charge, we are losing $111.88 for each 2-hour job. So therefore, there is being asked by the finance department that there should be at least an increase so that the village can cover its costs. I saw that it stuck out with me, and of course, I had to let the residents to know that. Okay? So those are the two things. I won't get into the minutia of detail of each particular thing we're talking about increasing the fee on, because again, when we increase the fee, we want to also have a projection of what that would bring into the village. And then, of course, as a board, we have to come up to a consensus and agree to that amount. The planning committee had a meeting yesterday where they proposed some increases in at least, 24 or so, I mean, is it at least a dozen or more fees that they would like to increase that have not been increased in the last, I believe, 10 years? And so we're looking at that very closely in order to close this gap. So that's all I have, and if there's nothing else, any department head that want to contribute anything to, they're free to go there. If not, we will now go to citizens' address. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have something, or you were just waiting, scratching? Okay, we have somebody. That's Sandra Phillips of Licensing and Permits. I always forget that she's there because you can never see her back there. I can't tell if she's sleeping, working, or what, because I never see her. Now, Ms. Phillips, she deals with permits and licenses in conjunction with the housing department. This is the person that you would see. Oh, you have handouts too. Nice. So she would deal primarily with the permits and the fees and the proposed increases. As you're going up, also let us know if you remember, Ms. Phillips, when was the last time we had any increases in our permit fees?
I don't remember.
How
I mean,
long
it has
have you
not-
been here?
10 years,
10?
yes. Okay, I'm proposing increase in building permit fees. This is just a rough. Yes, because I'm so tall. Increase in the permit fees. This is just a rough draft. As you can see, our permit fees start 0 to 500, and then it increases gradually through this form. So the proposal is $500 to $5,500 be increased $60 for the permit as well as for the inspection. Then the next grouping would be $5,501 to $6,000, cutting off at $9,500 to $10,000, that they be increased. I'm sorry, that would be increased $60. The other one was $30, pardon me. Then, as you can see, a gradual increase for $100 and then to $150. Then on the other side, another gradual increase. This gets to be like $18,501 to $24,500, increased by $200. Now, as it stands now, the figures that you see on here is what we charge. Then when it gets to be over $25,000, we have just been calculating that cost at 2%. So that would kind of wipe that out.
Okay.
So I would like you to consider this, because as you know, our fiscal starts May 1st.
Yes.
We need to enact this at that time.
Does Ms. Redmond have a copy of this? And you've discussed this with her also, right?
We've discussed it, yes.
Okay, great. My apologies to the residents. The reason why you don't have, these are rough, so I don't want anybody getting this because it's still in the stages of being worked out. And I know a resident had a concern. They were kind of flying through it yesterday, so I want to make sure that that resident know that we're going to take our time through this, and it's not anything written in stone, and this is merely recommendations, and then we can make some projections once we all look at it. But it's well taken, your recommendations. The scope of work or cost of jobs. We have jobs that range up in the village of Dalton up to like $24,000, $25,000.
Sure we do.
Give me an example of what that would, something like that would be.
Well, that would be the companies that come here, a new company or a company that's already here who's improving their their business. We don't have homeowners who are doing that kind of building. What you say?
She's proposing, that's what she's proposing.
Right. Menard is doing a big build out. So we have several companies that are doing big build outs.
Quick question on the back where it has the plumbing fee for install clean out is lined out. You're not going to do that anymore, or?
We haven't done that since I've been here. I don't know why that's there.
Okay, and replace sewer line, that's nothing we do.
No, that's not anything we do either.
Yeah, I don't mean to blindside you with this question, but it just came up because I was going to ask you an example of a homeowner like me who owns a tri-level, who wants to get their basement, 2 bathrooms, and kitchen remodeled, whatever that would cost. What is generally a remodeling job like that would cost me to have a permit done for what I just described? Bathroom, well, I got a tri-level, it's just a little tiny house. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but I want to get the basement, the 2 bathrooms, and my kitchen redone. So you would have to know what the scope of the work is.
I would have to know what the scope of the work is, because you're going to have electric, plumbing,
Yeah.
all of which is calculated different.
Is there a
So
range that, based upon your 10 years being here, what that would be, or it just varies?
it varies.
Okay.
I mean, because I don't, your contractor, he charges you something different for his expertise. So, we would ask you to turn in drawings, we would review those, and your contractors would submit permit applications with a cost to that job, and we would calculate it from there.
One last question, and I don't want to blindside you on this, but you might know the number. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've done this thing where we waive the permit fees.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, well, we've been seriously discussing that, but we need a number from you of what we're losing. When I say losing, it's because we waived that fee, and we're not generating any revenue to go into the GL account.
Well, one year
Number is?
that stands out in my head is that it was over $70,000 that we lost, and I think that's the year that we did 3 months.
That was the first year, was that
So
2014?
that was quite a loss. And then the other problem is the homeowners come in to get the permit during the period in which they could use it. They don't use it. They come back 2 or 3 months later and they still want the free permit. It kind of pushes people to say that they're going to make some improvements, and they're really not ready to do that.
It's like a loophole, I mean.
Yes.
And it's good for what, the whole year? Is there a time limit on when I get a permit?
90 days.
Oh, okay, so I can get it during that time, and then 2 months later or 3 months later I could, okay.
Mhm.
All right, well,
But that means you must be done by the 90 days.
90th day, okay.
Yes.
One additional question, with the suggested increases, is there an estimated amount of revenue of additional revenue we can recognize?
I did not do that calculation, so.
If you could, work with Ms. Redmond, because what we would like to show the residents, what we project. For example, she put one together for increasing of certain fees, what we could, the village could realize. So if you two can work together on that, and if we can have it by the next community committee of the whole meeting, and I think it's April 20th around that time. Can we make that happen?
Well, I was expecting that if I can get you that information, this would be on the next board
One for
meeting
April
agenda.
2nd? You talking about for
Yes.
this? Okay, well, let me meet with Ms. Redmond next week, probably next week, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Because we
Okay.
have to get that agenda in, but this is one of those emergency things, so we can probably get in. Our deadline for getting material into the clerk is Tuesday.
Thursdays.
Well, Tuesday. So
Tuesday.
it's published on Thursday.
Okay.
But for something like this, we'll see if she can waive that, okay? So we'll work with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Phillips. Is there anything else? Okay, if not, you want to address this board? You're free to do that.
Good evening, everyone. I want to recommend that we do not raise the sticker prices. Prior administration.
It wasn't discussed, Mayor. Raising the sticker price wasn't discussed tonight.
The chief mentioned about enforcement of the stickers. There was no comment about the stickers
We
tonight?
did not discuss raising the village sticker tonight, sir.
I thought someone just mentioned the fact that we wanted to raise the village stickers.
We did not discuss raising the village sticker tonight.
Okay. Just in case you do discuss it in the future. I recommend that we do not raise the village sticker prices. The prior administration raised it from $20 to $40. I was the only one on the board that voted against that. The problem was that when you raise the price of the stickers, you can raise it to $100, but the people that's not going to buy stickers are not going to buy stickers. So you penalize the people that buy the stickers. So what we did was, when I got elected first administration, we bought a list from the Secretary of State, and we asked the former chief administration to enforce the vehicle sticker by writing tickets. We also posted it on Channel 4. We posted it in the Sentinel. And Edlina, who has retired now, was in charge of the stickers, and she had to order stickers 3 to 4 times in addition. And once we posted it, there was people that were wrapped around the building. We took in an additional $2 million. So I agree with the chief when he talks about maybe our inspectors can go over to be community service officers, CSOs, and a lot of the communities have them, to do the enforcement. Now, there was one year that, well, first of all, the state police they write the most tickets throughout the whole state. And then the second largest community that wrote tickets was the Village of Markham. And they took in a ton of revenue. Now, I would suggest that we hire more police officers and possibly put in a traffic detail, and they will definitely pay for themselves. I'm not suggesting that we prey on our residents, but we have a main thoroughfare, Sibley Boulevard, a lot of truck traffic, hardly any of them do the speed limit. And if we would put traffic details in place, we're a home rule community, we can write those speeding tickets or enforcement tickets as P tickets to come into the village, and we collect that revenue. And they will pay for themselves. Officers will pay for themselves. It would help purchase vehicles for the police department, and support, and that will go to the general fund. Some of that money will go to the general fund and will help support this village. You know, we're looking at towards maybe a $2 million deficit towards the end of this year. I made some suggestions to the police chief and to Yvonne in regards to the enforcement of those stickers. And I know if in fact that we did more enforcement on the stickers, we're looking at possibly once a ticket is issued for a sticker after the time period, it's $80. And then from the city of Chicago, they used to go back 3 years. If you haven't purchased a sticker for 3 years, you would have to make that payment before you can purchase a current sticker. So I think currently we go back 1 year. So if you buy a sticker after the time period, it's $80. That goes from $40 to $80. And then if you didn't buy one from last year, that's $160. And if a ticket is issued, what's the cost of a ticket, Chief? Is it a $100 ticket for no sticker? For no sticker. Yeah, $40. So now you're looking at $160 plus a $40 ticket. You're looking at $200. And when we first bought the list, it was about 16,000 registered vehicles, and I think there was only like about 1,500 registered vehicles that had bought stickers. So if and it's going to be a little bit time consuming, but if we buy the list from the Secretary of State's office, we compare it with the data of the people that bought stickers at the end of the time period in June. All those other vehicles that are registered to Dalton are issued tickets, and they would have to come to court and either, prior to coming to court, buy a sticker or be penalized for the fine when they come to court, and you're looking at probably close to $5 million in revenue. And I think by that enforcement, even if we had meter maids, I'm just going to use the term meter maids, to go out and write the enforcement of the registration, state registration, and city registration on the stickers, we can realize possibly bringing in that revenue and meeting that $2 million deficit at the beginning of December. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. First, I want to thank the members of the fire department, the police department. I thought your ideas were absolutely fantastic. I do have some questions, but the first issue that I want to address right now is, at what point in time was the Board of Trustees aware of the water issue, the money that we owe?
As I said earlier, it was around July, upon the departure of Mr. Urban.
Around July?
Of last year, yes.
So July of last year, it just exploded into negative $8 million, $8 million hole in debt?
No.
No. Okay.
It accumulated because of penalties and interest fees, yes.
Because
as stated earlier.
Okay. So between the standing committees on the Board of Trustees, what committee has oversight over the water department?
We have a committee over the water department. Why don't you get to your point, so what you have to say? What is your point? We have a committee.
Instead of rushing me to get to my point, I'm just looking to get questions answered.
Nobody's rushing you, sir.
You are. You said get to the point. That's by definition, you are rushing me.
Back and forth.
Yeah, we don't have to go back and forth. You can actually stop, but you can stop and I can continue. Okay, which committee has oversight over the water department?
We have a committee over the water department.
Which committee? He doesn't know. No committee has oversight over the water department. That committee is supposed to have oversight over all water activities, and they should know beforehand if there's any type of debts or fees that are owed to a particular municipality or a business. So therefore, the Board of Trustees is not doing their job in this regard. Disagree with it if you want, that's the truth. I like the idea, Ms. Redmond, just a question here. The revenue generated by the departments, is it going into their GL or is it going to the general fund?
It's going into, what you have to understand is the bank account is totally separate from having a fund. Yeah. We have general fund, water fund, but we did not, prior to this month, we did not have a water fund. I have just this month established a water fund as well as a sewer fund. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do beginning of the fiscal year is when you come in to pay your water bill, you're paying for water, trash, and sewer. The monies for each one will go into the separate account.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. The next thing, I want to make sure that when the Board of Trustees make these decisions that they don't target the residents or the visitors of the village specifically, but definitely also target the bad decisions made by the village government. The youth center, that was the $80,000 that we cannot get back, and other decisions that you can possibly cite. Don't just police the citizens and put it on the back of the residents. Make sure that the village government is held accountable. Make sure that the departments are reduced. Make sure that the increased spending does not occur in the future, especially if we don't have the money. One thing that I wanted to ask questions, and I'm going to sit down and hopefully I can get the department heads to answer these questions, is, Chief, if you could talk about asset forfeiture, about everyone see how much we actually incurred, got from asset forfeiture this year or last year or previous years. Administrative adjudication. And the question I have for you is state law. Will state law supersede any ordinance that we put into place? Or do we have? Would you like me to answer those questions? Okay. And that would be it for now. Thank you.
Okay. I'll come up there. Fine. Okay. Regarding asset forfeiture, the law is that if we seize funds or seize property, let's just say from drug dealers, the people who the property is seized from, they have an opportunity to go to a hearing. And at that hearing, they have to prove that they have a legal right to that particular piece of property, or that they came upon the money by legal means. If they cannot do that, then the county will declare that those funds have been forfeited and they will go to the municipality. So for the village of Dalton, we have hovered somewhere between 100,000 to 300,000 at different points in seized funds, if that figure sounds correct. Okay, so those funds can only be spent by law on law enforcement purposes, improvement of the facilities, buying police vehicles, buying police equipment, anything that has to do with law enforcement so that we can further our efforts to fight crime, fight drugs and gangs and things like that. Does that answer your question about asset forfeiture? Okay, and also if there's anything that we need to purchase, a lot of times we will go to the asset forfeiture account because that is not taxpayer money. That is money that has been provided by your local drug dealers and whatnot. So thank you to them. The other question was about
State law superseding.
State law superseding. Okay, as a home rule community, you have the lawmakers have an opportunity to create ordinances that are even more restrictive than state law. They can't be more lax than state law, but they can make ordinances that are more restrictive than state law. So we don't actually supersede it. We just can go by the state law or even restrict it even further. Does that answer your question? And what was your other question? Administrative adjudication. So when we write P-tickets is short for parking tickets, or actually village ordinance tickets. Those tickets go to our local court, and they are adjudicated there by a hearing officer. And it is run just like a regular court call in Markham, except that adjudication happens here, and all the funds or fines that are paid stays within the village of Dalton. We don't have to share those fines or funds with anyone. Does that answer your question?
So the truck stops, that would then go to our administrative.
We would like that. In a perfect world, if we can draft any ordinance that won't violate any state laws, all of that will go to our local court. That's the goal. That's our desire. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief, for that.
I'm taller than everybody that's come up here. Just real quickly, I had a couple questions. I think that the suggestions were great, and I think that we should do whatever we can to make sure that some of the things that were suggested go into place. But my bigger question is that when the committee sits down and makes these decisions, how involved will you allow the residents to be in the decision making so that you can hear our voices and what we want, as opposed to what you think is best for us?
Right. The information that comes here would go to the committee of the whole meeting, which is a non-voting meeting. So as we're making the suggestions or recommendations, it will be discussed amongst the board, and at that time, it will also have citizens address. Nothing will be voted on. So at the committee of the whole meeting, the residents will have an opportunity to express their opinions or their feedback, and we'll also have a 2-week period in between, at least 2 weeks between committee of the whole and the actual voting period for residents who are unable to attend the committee of the whole meeting to give phone calls to the trustees or to speak with them as we see them out in the community.
So is that the 3 minutes that's allowed at the end for citizens address?
It is the 3 minutes at the end for citizens address. However, there will not be, the item presented would not have been voted on. So we will have the committee of the whole meeting, we'll discuss it. At the end, there will be a 3-minute period where citizens address, where the citizens can give their feedback. And then the following board meeting, it will be voted on based on feedback given during citizens address, as well as any feedback that may have come in the 2-week period afterwards.
I really want to believe that. I do. I honestly want to believe that. But sometimes I honestly don't think that the views of the residents are really considered. I don't, because some of the decisions that have been made in the past, I don't agree with them, and I don't think my voice had been heard. So I would wonder if there's going to be a platform ever that we can really talk about some of the things that are happening in our community. I think fundraising is something we need. We do definitely need to raise our revenue, but I don't agree that we need to go up on our sticker prices. Whether I knew it wasn't spoken about, but it was. Under recommendations, I wrote increased price of stickers, so I heard it. Wasn't discussed, but it was mentioned. So because it was mentioned, I'm going to say, please don't do that, because I buy a sticker every year. And what else did I have? I wanted to know, do we do, and maybe this is for Chief and even Fire Chief, is there any type of collections through the state that you can get municipal fines collected upon? We already do that, where they take the state tax return? Okay. So that might be something we might want to step up on as far as the booting is concerned. Not that I have any violations, but perhaps that might be one. Had one other question about the permits. Are we talking the building permits for any type of home improvements that are being done? Where's Sandra? There she is. So any type of residential permit, I'm sorry, any type of work being done on a residence requires a permit? So if I'm going to replace a window, I have to come get a permit?
Pretty much everything except for painting.
If I do it myself?
Painting.
Doesn't matter.
So if I replace a window in my house, I have to, okay.
I don't think you need it for painting, do you?
No, she did say you don't need it for painting, but any type of repair.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for me. Thank you. When's the next finance meeting?
We don't know yet.
We don't
gotta
know.
meet after this.
Okay. But we'll know what you're considering increasing.
Yes, at the committee of the whole meeting.
The committee of the
Next
whole.
month.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date. I don't have the calendar. I want to say around the 20th of April. The committee of the whole meeting is every second Monday of the month. I'm just not sure what day that falls on.
Okay, I'm short. Hello, good afternoon, committee. I don't know if this is the appropriate meeting for me, but since you're talking to the finance committee, and I've been a Dalton resident for 18 years, and it's about my finances. You mentioned, Trustee Muhammad, to Ms. Barbara here about the water bill and the average bill being estimated, and then so when you get an actual bill, it shouldn't be that much off. Well, just recently, in my case, personally, that didn't happen. I've been receiving an estimated bill for the last 2 years and paying it. I made a payment January for $400 for my water bill. March, I get a new bill for $570. And they turned my water off without giving me notice. I came up here, spoke with Ms. Barbara. She told me that a final notice was sent out, which I never received. I asked her, could she print me a copy off her computer and regenerate it? She said the computer was not allowed to do that. And so I was unfairly cut off, and it was on a Friday, very low down, so I couldn't do anything till Monday. And so my concern is that if you estimated me for 2 years, and my bill was $160, you asked her what was the average bill, which was correct, but now I get a whooping bill for $570, almost $600, after I just paid $400 2 months before that. I went from 10 units as an estimate to 77 units. There's a problem there. And then they shut me off. I had to pay, they wanted $500, the total bill for me to pay. So I had to give them $250 to turn my water back on. Now I owe them another $250 that they want by April 5th. I need that to be addressed. They said it wasn't a water committee. Who can address this type of issue?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Your bill, when you were getting the estimated bills for 2 years, what was your bill at that time every 3 months?
Every 3 months, the estimated bill with the trash, everything included, would be between $140 and $160.
Okay. And then when you got the accurate reading, that's when it jumped up to 475.
That is correct.
And you called them when you got that, I'm sure, when you got that bill, you called them that day when you received that, because it's unusual to get that amount.
Oh, actually, I sure did. And I was told that don't worry about it, that there's probably a mistake, you can come in and discuss it, which I have done so previously. I'm on a fixed income now due to a short-term disability, and so therefore getting a whopping bill like that, it was very overwhelming. And I was told don't worry about it in the past. You can go 3 months or 2 months without paying your bill. So I figured that I was safe since I just paid a large bill and I had a zero balance after I paid that bill. Now I get the new bill and it's almost $600. I called and they said, don't worry about it. I was coming in that Monday to discuss it. But they turned my water off the very next day. It was due on the 15th. They turned my water off on the 16th with no notice whatsoever. So I believe that that infringes upon my rights as a citizen and a resident of Dalton, and it's against the law. You're supposed to notify me and let me know, and give me the 10 days from the date of the letter to turn my water off. That didn't happen. And I was not the only one in there, but I'm talking about me. But there was more residents that the same thing happened to. And it just seemed like to me that they went on a rampage in my area. I learned that I'm in Division 3, and seeing who owed water bill. And also, my main concern, too, I was told by Miss Barbara that they don't have to give notice. when she could not generate me a letter. She told me they don't have to give notices anymore if your water bill is over $250. That's what I was told. Then I came over and spoke to Ms. Johnson. She didn't elaborate exactly what Ms. Barber said, but she waived the reconnection fee, but still insisted that I pay $250 half to keep my water, to get my water turned back on. So that's something I would like the committee to address.
Were you offering any kind of payment plan?
Of course, I was. I had the 2 payments. I gave them $250 on the spot that Monday to turn it back on, and then I owed them $250, which is due April 5th, April 6th.
And it was cut off before that next payment?
Yes, they turned it off on Friday.
Could you give Trustee Pearson your information so we can follow up on this?
I sure will.
Okay.
Thank you.
He's right here in the front. If you could, just give him your information.
Good evening. I have a question in regards to, and I believe the young man asked a question about the water bill. Can you give me, Trustee Mohammed, you said that we owed how much money to the city of Chicago?
Between $7 to $8 million.
And that amount
in arrearages.
In arrearages, and that amount includes penalties, correct? That we've incurred.
I believe it's interest and penalties, isn't it?
It's about $2 million.
Pardon me?
It's about $2 million.
For what year?
We entered into agreement with City of Chicago back in 2014. At that time, we owed just shy of $3 million. So this goes back prior to 2014.
Prior to 2014?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought we had problems with the water bill back in 2012, 2013, and now we're back there again. But you said that you did not find this out until last July, that we had not been making payments? Okay.
Now, according to my understanding, let me try to do it, and Ms. Redmond can correct me. The village administrator, when Ms. Redmond would come to him about what bills should be paid, I think they did what's called an inter-department transfer. Oh, this must not be on. Oh, it's on. Can you hear me? And in doing so, it took some of those monies out of that fund to pay other bills.
Okay.
And when you keep doing that and doing it to meet payroll, to meet, vendor obligations, that's my understanding. Don't quote me exact, but that's how I understand it to be.
Okay, and then for the residents concerning a water payment. Now, we've had many residents come here, and we were supposed to, I thought it was, I have to go back and read the minutes that were approved. We were supposed to set up payment plans, allow us to be able to set up payment plans. If I got a $500 bill to shut off my water, and then you require me to pay $250, we'll say I don't have $250 right then. Being on a fixed income, I may not get my income until the 3rd of the month or the 15th of the month, and I'm still sitting with no water. We can't, you guys, I thought that the trustees agreed to work with residents to make payment arrangements.
Yeah, my understanding, that's how it was. And again, I don't want to speak with Ms. Batten.
I don't know.
Everybody's payment plan is different, I would assume. It depends on how much you owe. And we got a couple of water department employees here. It's not one size fits all from my understanding.
Correct.
It depends on your situation, depends on your income.
Right.
Just a little fact that everybody should know, I think it's about 80-something% of us that pay our water bill.
Right.
It's
Okay.
a little over 80% that pay. I've been living out here, it'll be 20 years in December. I've never had an issue with my water bill.
Yes.
I've forgotten to pay my bill when it was on that little white card. Remember, it was on that little, and I would throw it away with the junk mail, and I'd get a bill for like $300. I'm like, oh, I called like everybody else. Yeah, Mr. Muhammad, you didn't pay it last time. You sure? And oh, okay, I see what happened. And then I just go ahead and pay it. But I'm sure if they would arrange a payment plan for me, that's why I need to know about this situation, because it sounds to me like a payment plan was made and it wasn't honored by us. I don't know. That's why we're going to investigate. I just can't speak on that, or that particular one you're referring to. I can only speak for what I've heard, that it depends on the individual's situation. Unless you're asking, they should not cut off water if you're on a payment plan. That's the gist of what you're saying?
Well, that's my understanding. If I call ComEd and I'm on a payment plan, then we've agreed that I will make X amount of money, a payment on the 19th of each month, or the 19th or the 21st, and which will enable you not to turn off my services. So I'm just saying that maybe someone can answer this question. Our systems that we have for our water, our bill payments, are they talking to each other? I'm saying the systems, the programs that we have, do they talk to each other?
The Locus software system? Let's do this, Ms. Let's do this. Once you finish it, we'll have her come up. She's the manager of the department. Ask your questions, and she can come up and answer the best she can.
Great. I want to know, do the systems in the village, technical systems, do they talk to each other? And because we need that to happen, I need to know that if I made a $200 payment, that if I get a bill, then it would show that I made a $200 payment, and this is what's owed on my bill. I didn't see that on my last bill. I didn't see that it showed that I made a payment. You know, like on the light bill, the gas bill, or whatever. It shows that you made a payment, and this is what you owe from this point to this point. I think we need to make sure that our systems are communicating with each other so that we could have a little more clarification and accuracy on paying our bills. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so to elaborate on a couple of things, when a customer calls in to make a payment arrangement, we have to manually note the account, okay? And we honor that. When we run a cutoff list and to give it to Public Works, we go by and check every note to see if they had a payment arrangement in there. And we do have customers that break those payment arrangements, and we tell them, if you don't pay this on time and continue, you have to pay your current bill as well, then your water's going to go back to where the position it was in before, which is cut off. So, and we do send the red notices. Since I've been doing the water bills, we send the red notices now out twice a month, where they used to go out maybe once every 2 months. And we also increased in the water department sending shut-off notices to give to Public Works. We do that 3 to 4 times a week now. So
it sounds like it's gotten more aggressive. Is that what
it has gotten more aggressive, but we are doing that to try to increase the revenue, for one thing, and the other thing, we're getting the villagers to come in and pay their water bill, because that's all we're asking them, to pay the water bills.
I think what I'm hearing is, and I don't know if this is the right word when it comes to collecting money, there's no humanity in the arrangement. It's like, I made an arrangement with you, but you're not honored. But you're saying you're in communication with the person that's on the payment plan before I get a cutoff notice. I'm getting some kind of notice that, hey, in 10 days, your water will be cut off.
Yes.
But it sounds like I heard, and I may misheard it, that it was cut off before that 10-day period. Does that sound familiar to you?
No, when the young lady that's sitting in front, when she came in, she already had owed that. She had her current bill. She's talking about her current bill came up due. It was due on the 15th, okay? And then the other portion was the past due amount. And as far as she was talking about the payment being on the actual water bill, where you make your payments, they've never been on there. I don't know. There's something with Locus. I may have to call them and ask them, can they put that on there?
I understand that it's never been.
But it does reflect in your balance. It does. And it's on your receipts. When you get your receipt, it shows you, you know, that you made your payment.
But I'm asking a question. Should we invest or look at, and that was a conversation a couple of years ago, that our technology able to communicate with each other so that it is accurate. You stated that you do more.
We would love for us to do that, but with Locust, it does not allow us to. We have to manually put that information in the system.
Right. So somewhere there may be a hiccup. So, but there needs to be, because really, ComEd, you make a payment arrangement, and it shows you if you have a balance. Nicor Gas, the same thing. It shows what your balance was, and you call in, and they'll give you a recording of your account, and it'll tell you what you owed or what's past due, and do you want to make a payment arrangement, blah, 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 blah. But we need to make sure that the technology that we have is able to communicate. I just know that there are a lot of there's better tech-savvy individuals than I am, but if we could do that or investigate that cost for that kind of system, because we keep talking about the water bills, we keep talking about debt, the people, 80% not of us pay it, but still, I mean, just be consistent, the estimated bill, and then we get a large bill. If I got a large bill of $500 and I'm on a fixed income, then that's a big strain.
Right, we do allow those people to make payment arrangements.
Other than just 50%, are they all?
No, we first asked them to pay half of the bill. Okay, if they say, hey, listen, I can't pay half this bill, you know, can I pay $100 a month for the next 6 months? Or however we work with them, yes. Okay. But they have to pay that and be consistent with it. Of course. Because guess what? We have so many residents that come and make the payment arrangements and go right back to where they start at. Because we have to tell them, listen, you have to pay this every month on this date that you've been given, and your current water bill as well whenever it comes out.
And I concur with that, because even with ComEd, you have to make sure you pay your arrears.
Right, plus your current.
The current, but they break those current payments down to how long you want to extend this payment, for 12 months or 6 months, and they'll give you what you have to pay additional each month with the current payment.
Right.
I just think that if we looked at technology that would talk to the different departments, that it could help us, you know, handle some of the fine print on what we're trying to accomplish here in the village.
I think she did say she's going to look into something that you talked, which is a software issue.
Right.
And she can look at that. And as you know, with software, it might be another module that has to be purchased.
It is. It's another module that we would have to purchase through Locust.
Right.
You know.
Ms. Creighton. So she's going to look into that. What you just said about the technology, talking to.
Yeah, because it would help us in more than one department.
It would help us too, believe me. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
It would make their job easier too.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions?
Okay, is there anyone else, so we can go up to the podium, ma'am?
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Miss Barbara. How you doing? I just want to ask you a quick question about the estimated bill, because a gentleman called me yesterday.
Okay.
Okay. Received the estimated bill at a lower cost than the regular bill, and when he finally got the regular bill, it was astronomical due to the fact that the estimated bill was a lower amount.
Right.
I was under the impression that we had changed that and raised that estimated bill. Not yet.
Not yet. We haven't did that yet. We just talked about it.
We talked about it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very kindly, and have a great evening.
And just so everyone can know, if a person have an estimated bill also, if their reading is 10 units or less, they're going to Locust automatically sends them estimated bill, whether we rate it or not. So if you use 8 units of water, you're going to get an estimated system automatically shoot you out an estimated bill.
Now that I got you, because I try to do a public service announcement when I get my reports from you, and hopefully this will air.
Okay.
What is the #1 thing that I need to avoid as a resident so I don't get this estimated, because it seemed like that's the common denominator in all this confusion. I got estimated, but I think the young lady said for 2 years. So
Right.
my understanding, the reason why she got an estimated bill, and then she can, is she still here? You can correct me. That means that yellow card, that when you fill out to get the actual billing on the next cycle,
Right.
you can avoid it. So what should I do so that I can avoid getting an estimated bill?
Well, one thing I've been telling most of the residents coming in, I've been kind of educating them on when their bills are coming out, since I've been kind of consistent on seeing the bills on there. They are out on time right now. So I've been telling them I run the bill the 20th of every month, okay? Whether you're in District 1, 2, or 3, it's going to be on the 20th. That's the first thing I tell them. So I need you reading anywhere between the 1st and the 15th of that particular month. I tell them what district you're in, and what 4 billing cycles, what month your billing cycles are going to be ran. So if they get the reading in, or if they don't know how to read the reading, call us. I give them the number, tell them to call us. We can set up an appointment, because sometimes people are at work all day and we just not getting the readings. And then the people who are at home, sometimes the outside readers not working. We find that it's a lot of things that's going on that we're trying to work on, trying to fix.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll educate the residents, and we can put some videos together, go on Channel 4 and 99 to kind of go over some of these things, because that's the common thing that I hear is the estimated
bills, yeah.
Going through the roof. And,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I got one other question for you. You said that you educate the residents on when their bill cycle is, and that's only if they inquire, or is there something published?
Well, most of the people, when they're calling in, they're asking about their balances, different things, and I let them know, we all let them know that you're in district such, and this is when the bills are being ran, and it's ran 4 times a year. We're going to need a reading. A lot of times people are calling in, we see they have a lot of estimated bills, so we automatically set up an appointment right then and there. Let me set up this appointment because you've been having a lot of estimated bills, and we need to get an accurate bill on you, before it gets too out of hand.
So I'm asking the question because I don't know. I just pay my bill when I get it, but I don't know all of the things you just stated. So maybe it might be considered to educate the entire village in some way that we all understand how our water bills are generated, so that we can be better prepared. Because if I don't know,
maybe that's something we can put on the Channel 4, is it, or something like that?
Some sort of way that we can let everybody know.
Because the only time we're reaching them is when they call in.
Okay.
What we can do, and we just said educating the public, and I just heard that everybody doesn't have cable.
Right.
Everybody's got internet, though. If you have a phone, you have internet. One of the things we can do, Ms. Ware, is hopefully do some type of educational video. You get your water bill, there can be a link on there that a person can go to, and on their phone, go to the link that we can produce that would have questions and answers, that type of thing, to help educate people.
That would be great.
All I know is that, like you say, when I get my bill, I'm like you. When I get the bill, I just pay it. If I see that little yellow card, I'm probably anal about it. I go right down in the basement, I write the little number, and I usually get one of you little nice people that take my number, and they are nice. I've never had anybody rude to me. I'm not saying it because I'm a trustee, and my voice is distinctive. Maybe they know it's me and they treat me because they know my voice, but I've never had a negative experience with the water department. That's an applause for that. I didn't know that. Like I said, the 2 times that I did get in my large bills, because I didn't pay the one because it was on that, and thank God we get it in the envelope.
Right.
Because it has the bill in it now that we can just go to this link to learn about frequently asked questions or whatever. And we can be a little 5-minute produce something, because we need to educate the public, because that's one of the biggest issues that we have. And it's no reflection on the persons working in the department.
Right.
It's just a large problem.
And another thing too, people don't know that they can call in your reading. Yes. A lot of people think they got to bring those cards in, or I forgot to bring the card in, or whatever. You can call it in. You can call it in to us, and we write them and put them in right then and there.
I didn't know that either. I can do that.
Yeah.
But here's just a last thought is perhaps post something in the water department so that I read when I go to places and see what you have posted, or have something there that I can take with me, because maybe I don't watch Channel 4. I have, and Mr. Steve will attest to this, I have a phone that I don't care to use the internet or any type of social media, but just different ways and innovative ways to think about how we can serve everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
All righty.
If there's no other questions or concerns, I'd like someone to make a motion to call for adjournment.
A motion to adjourn?
Second. Okay, we'll take the roll. Trustee Denton? Aye. Trustee Muhammad, aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion is taken and meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.